Excited again to have all of you on here. We've got about 60 people that signed up for this from 3 different states. All kinds of industries are being represented, from private sector to public sector, for profit, not for profit. All of us are really looking for the same basic thing. We're trying to figure out what is the process for overcoming the setbacks that we've experienced in our world. Now, the setbacks that we've experienced are temporary, but they can feel very permanent. So our creativity, the ideas that we come up with, the way that we think through things, that's going to determine how we get past what we're dealing with right now. So as we get into the webinar and we talk about how you're going to make your comeback, I want you to be thinking about your own situation and thinking about where you're at and where you would like to be. If you're like most people, you started off this year incredibly strong. Last year was a fantastic year for most businesses. My first quarter of this year was phenomenal. It was the highest profit first quarter that I've ever had in my business history. And I've been in business for 21 years now. Knowing that it was going absolutely swimmingly perfect, on March 13th, I flew back from DC. I'd been doing training for a hospital group out in that area. And by the time I got back, it was just cancellation after cancellation after cancellation. I had a choice to make. Each of us has that same choice that we have to make. You can either sink or you can swim. You really don't have the option of just going, but I want it back the way it was. You have to step up and go, life is different. What are we going to do about it? So, we're going to cover 4 basic things today as we go through this program. The first is I want to help you go through a process to see the potential in your future. Then we're going to talk about how you create a plan that works backwards from the end of the game back to what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to talk about what makes success easier for you. And then I'm going to talk about how you get yourself and your team on the right path to be where you want to be in the future. If you didn't download the handout yet, you are more than welcome to do that. In the last 2 emails that came to you, one about an hour before and one 10 minutes before, you have access to download a PDF of this handout. So there are some things that we need, and I want to take you through the 6 basic human needs. And my background is that I went to college back in the 1990s from 90 to 94. I got a degree in interpersonal communication, took a bunch of sociology, started really trying to understand why people do the things that they do. Went back for a master's degree in psychology, and I've used that psychology as a part of what I do with executive coaching and leadership development for 20 plus years now. I worked for the state of Texas first, and I had a nice, secure job. It was a great job. I actually really enjoyed it, learned a lot, really grew up a lot in that job. From there, I went to work for a not for profit, went to work for the Boy Scouts in Abilene, Texas, and I did fundraising and program development. And I learned to do a lot of team building. I was in charge of their COPE program, which is Challenging Outdoor Personal Experience, COPE, or the ropes courses. I learned variety in that job. We have some basic personality needs that each of us faces. The first is we need the security of knowing what comes next. Sometimes security and variety can be in opposition to one another. That variety need that we experience, that's that need for us to understand how we can make things new and exciting and adventurous without just stepping off of first base and running for second before the ball is thrown. So, as you think about what your personality needs are, we need some security. That's a lot based on your core personality. If you've ever taken a DISC assessment, dominance, influence, steadiness, conscientiousness, those 4 quadrants developed originally by William Moulton Marston looked at the way that we present ourselves in the workplace. The kind of job that you are drawn to is based on which of these is more dominant for you, the need for security or the need for variety. The people with a stronger need for security are in the S or C category. They're steady or they're conscientious. A steady individual is driven by understanding what is predictable and what's coming next. Conscientious person is driven by understanding that they are in control of the plan. The people who are driven more on the personality side by variety are dominant or influential. A dominant person is a very much a big picture thinker who is driven by accomplishing things. They like the side of variety that allows them to do new things at work and to accomplish cool things. Then you've got the other side of that, which is the relationship variety, which is the influencers. They're very big picture thinking, but they like the variety of who do I get to interact with? How often do I get to be out in public? Those are your people that you would see as extreme extroverts. Then you have significance versus connection. We are all seeking at some level to be significant, but we seek it out differently based on our core personality makeup. Some people seek significance in being recognized by other people. Those are the people driven by relationship, which are the influencers and the steady individuals. Other people seek significance based on accomplishment, and those are the dominant and the conscientious people. The connection side of things are also driven very much by where we get our fulfillment, an introvert versus an extrovert. An introvert gets their connection and their recharge from one-on-one relationships away from a big crowd of people. An extrovert gets their connection and their recharge from being around large groups of people and being out in the public. Depending upon what your makeup is in these first four areas of what we as individuals need, you're either going to be driven more by security or more by variety, more by significance or more by connection. Those are the core personality needs. Now, the growth and the purpose, these are at a subconscious level wired into everyone. They are not in opposition of one another. In fact, they are connected very deeply. When we need growth, that means that we need, as individuals, to become better than we were yesterday. One of the big problems that we have, according to Simon Sinek, is that in business, so often our growth is based on competing with another business as opposed to trying to figure out how we become better than who we were. He says that we are either playing a finite or an infinite game. Those playing the infinite game are playing the game to win for the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that. Those playing the finite or limited game are the ones that are playing the game designed just to win this month or this quarter. The position that we're in right now, facing this pandemic and the economic downturn that we've experienced since the kind of middle of March up until about now, is that our growth has to be based on how do we innovate and how do we market ourselves in a better way so that we still live into purpose. Purpose is what we are hardwired for. You wake up every day and you have a reason for getting up. You have a reason for making an impact on the world. When you define your purpose, and I talked about this in my book, Leadership Evo, you have to have some very specific things. You have to know what your values are. You have to know what actions you're driven by, and you have to know what results you want to achieve. If you know the values, and I mean the one or two values that are most important, the one or two actions you can take every day, and the one or two results that you want to achieve on a daily basis, that creates you. So you can think of the acronym VARY, or values, actions, results, you. By getting that acronym filled out on who you are, you start to discover what your core purpose is. This has been a great time of reflection for a lot of people in just being able to understand what it is specifically that drives them into a greater level of purpose within their life. So the first four are in opposition of each other: security versus variety, significance versus connection, and those are related to the core personality or temperament makeup of a person. The last two are related to your subconscious makeup. You need growth and you need purpose in order to feel fulfilled in your life. Now, everybody has an option. And I want to talk about some examples of companies that could have gone either way and see what lessons we can learn from what the choices were that they made. So I picked three different companies, read about 50 different companies that had downturns and then made their comebacks. Apple was one of those. When Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple, they started it just in a garage, and they did some amazing things. They created these computers, they connected with educators, they innovated, and then at some point, Jobs got obsessed with creating projects that really didn't make a whole lot of sense. Lucy was one of those projects that was named after his daughter. And what he was trying to do was create the best computer ever, but it was so expensive that nobody was ever going to buy it. When Scully took over and Steve Jobs was given the opportunity to leave the company that he had helped to found, he went off and he found himself. He bought a company called Next and he bought Pixar. And with those two companies, he recreated his imagination. Now, up until he came back in 1997, there was still some struggles. Leadership was focused on the wrong development. There were too many directions, too many products, not enough narrowed down focus so that they could really get their marketing right. And then in the early 1990s, when Windows 95 came out, Microsoft dominated the market. The things they did wrong were they didn't focus, they went in too many directions, and their leadership was all over the place. The way that they got back was the two things that Peter Drucker talks about that create success for every company, and that is marketing and innovation. They started to innovate in the right way, but then they really honed in on the 4 or 5 products that had the greatest impact, and they marketed those products. Even though when Jobs came back, they only controlled 3% of the computer market, he started innovating with things like iTunes and the iPhone and the iPod, and then eventually the iPad and the iMac and all of those kinds of things. They started figuring out with some of the innovation initially, people wanted a certain color of computer. And they would buy a computer if they could get it in green or pink or purple or blue before they would buy a computer because it was truly the right machine for them. When they started listening to their market and instead of being in love with their product or their service, they fell in love with their customer, then they innovated in the right way. So one of the most important lessons I want you to get from Apple is that when they made their comeback, it was because they loved the customer more than they loved the product. And by doing that, leadership was focused on the right development. They went in just the right number of directions so that they could focus their marketing, and they partnered up with Microsoft. They allowed Microsoft Office to be put onto Mac computers or sold onto the Mac computers because Jobs went to Bill Gates and got a $150 million investment from Bill Gates in exchange for allowing Microsoft Office, their most profitable product or software, to be put onto the Apple. Amazon is another one of those. And I really wish I would have bought Amazon stock in 2001 when it dropped to $5.51 a share at its lowest point. But Amazon started as an online bookseller and they just kept innovating and innovating and innovating, but they didn't make the focus on their people. The reason that their share prices went from $361 a share in 98 to $5.51 a share in 2001 is because the morale of their teams was bad because they weren't managing them effectively. They weren't staffed up at the level that they needed to be, and oftentimes asked their employees, can you ask your family if they can come work on the weekend for us? Their back end production systems were not functioning in the right manner, and things were a little bit chaotic. In 2001, Bezos swore, we will get it right. He kept raising money and kept pouring into Amazon. Now he's considered one of the richest men in the world, but it's based on one basic thing that they did. Amazon said, let's study the buying patterns of our people. Let's focus on what is important to them and what we can suggest to them. And then let's remove the barriers to doing business with us. By removing the barriers, what they did is they created the first click to buy. You didn't have to fill anything else out. You just clicked once and it would ship it to you. They also created Amazon Prime, which allowed you to get free shipping and then have continued to add other things available for Prime members. They created a loyalty system based on what their customer wanted. So again, the reason they made their comeback is they stopped being in love with their products and services and started being in love with their customer. Converse is a really interesting one. They were started in 1917 as the Converse Rubber Corporation. By 1932, they signed their first endorsement deal with Chuck Taylor or Charles Taylor. It was in 1942 that they put Chuck Taylor on the shoes. And shortly after that, Chuck came up with the idea of going from a low top to a high top shoe, which was dubbed the basketball shoe. From that point forward, the basketball shoe was any shoe that had a higher top on it to protect the ankles of the players. Up through the mid 1970s, they controlled 80% of the athletic shoe market. And then Nike came along and Adidas came along, and they poured money like crazy into creating a better shoe and being innovative. So their innovation and their marketing were the two things that Nike and Adidas did so much better than what Converse had done. From the mid 1970s to 1998, Converse's market share dropped from over 80% down to 2.3%. In 2001, they filed for bankruptcy to reorganize. And in 2003, Nike purchased Converse for $305 million. Nike figured out the micro niche for Converse. They started marketing Converse to rockers and to skaters and to people that were a different version. They went off the history of Converse and the coolness and quirkiness of the shoe. They make that shoe for somewhere around $3 a shoe, and it retails for $54 a shoe. Their market share continued to go up from 2003 to the present, and now you can see Converse in almost every high school all over the United States. They failed initially because of a lack of innovation, only one endorsement deal, and they were kind of stuck in the 1970s and earlier. Three colors of shoes, two styles, high top, low top. That was it. That ended up being what made them cool once Nike purchased them, but they were marketed very differently at that point. The marketing side of it was figuring out who the right customer was for the Converse shoes. So I want you to think about that for just a minute. When you think about the things that made these organizations create a comeback, the number one thing is falling in love with your customer. So you may want to write that down if you're taking notes. The number two thing was that they figured out who to market to. They didn't market to everybody. They marketed to the people that had the highest likelihood of buying. Amazon said, well, people who purchase this thing also like this other thing. And they started correlating big data so that they would recommend things. And they make it really easy to purchase. Once Nike bought Converse, the Converse division started figuring out what their micro niche of the market was. It was no longer the basketball players. It became the people who were iconic in the rock and roll industry and people who were eclectic and interesting. And that's who they started marketing to. They made their commercials fit the people that would purchase from them. Apple did the same thing. Once Steve Jobs came back, they created Think Different. Here's to the innovators, the creators, the people who are different than the rest of the world. And they started creating this almost cult-like following of, I'm an Apple fan, I buy Mac only. Those are the kind of people that they were looking for, was people who could be truly, truly loyal to that specific brand. As we move forward, coming out of this, we have to develop the will and the vision to win. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this. The 1, 26, 30, 9,000, 10,000, and plus one, these represent different aspects of grit or overcoming obstacles. If you've not read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, I recommend that book. Shows you how to get back up at least one more time than you fall down. But the number one represents Bethany Hamilton. Bethany Hamilton had her arm bitten off by a shark. She was a surfer and a very competitive surfer and really good at what she did. 2 years after losing an arm to a shark, just one arm, she ended up coming back and winning a national surfing title. Not in any special category, but in the same category that she was number 2 or 3 in, kind of back and forth with this other person. She ended up being number 1. So that was the will and to be able to see where she was going. 26 represents Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss was rejected by 26 different publishers when he wrote his book, The 4-Hour Work Week. The premise, I want you to think about Benjamin Franklin. He said that we would advance technology to the point where we could accomplish a 40-hour work week in only 4 hours if we learned to innovate and focus. So Tim Ferriss just kept going and going and going, but he had burned out as an entrepreneur, finally took a vacation after 4 years. It was going to be a 1-month European vacation. He turned it into an 18-month world tour. And in that world tour, he started creating a better way to do things. The 4-hour work week is a way to maximize productivity. It's not that you really only work 4 hours, but it's how do you accomplish more in 4 hours than you ever would have before. The 30 represents Stephen King. I am still freaked out by clowns because of this guy, but his first book, Carrie, he was rejected by 30 different publishers. He was a janitor at the time and just liked to write these stories. His wife kept encouraging him, keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. At 29, he threw the entire manuscript for Carrie away and said, I'm done. I will never write again. His wife said, try 2 more times. If after 2 more times you don't get published, I'll never bother you about being a writer again. Your writing is just brilliant. To date, because number 31 published Carrie, he has sold well over 100 million copies of his books, turned a number of those books into movies. He has done incredible. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players, if not the greatest basketball player of all time, missed 9,000 shots during his career. 26 different times he was counted on to take the game-winning shot, and he missed. Thomas Edison was kicked out of school, and he was dubbed, quote unquote, too stupid to learn. He went to work at 10 years old selling candy and newspapers on a train. Loved doing science. His mom had bought him all kinds of books. So he'd sell up and down the train. He had a captive audience. And then he would go to the caboose and he would do science experiments. He ended up catching the caboose on fire and being fired from that job. As a result of being fired, he used innovation in order to still have a captive audience. He asked several building owners if he could distribute papers up and down the building directly to people in their offices so they didn't have to go down to the corner of the street like what had been done in the past. By doing that, he effectively created the paper route. He was the first paper boy that we ever had, and he hired 9 and 10-year-olds to go to work for him. When he created the incandescent bulb, somewhere in the range between 2,000 and 10,000, depending on which stories you read, he tried 10,000 different times to create the light bulb. He was interviewed by a newspaperman at one point, and they said, why did you keep going after all those failures? He goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. I never failed. I discovered 9,999 ways not to create the light bulb. By changing the way that you perceive the world around you and realizing you only have to get up one more time than what you're knocked down, you develop the will and the vision to win. With each of these examples, as well as the examples of the company, they didn't look at a setback as the reason for failure. They looked at it the way that Napoleon Hill described it in his book, Think and Grow Rich, which is every setback holds within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. The setback was really just a setup for greater success. When you look at the position that you're in right now, whether you're for-profit, not-for-profit, government, or private, we have all had some setbacks that we've had to deal with. In looking at those setbacks, you have to ask yourself the question, what's the lesson learned, and how can I use that to innovate and to market myself in a different way? And by creating that right vision for where you go next, you start to be the designer of your own destiny. You see, your human mind works at both a conscious and a subconscious level. The conscious mind processes 2,000 bits per second of information. That means that you're taking in a whole lot of stuff. If you did each bit as a drop of water, in 60 seconds, you would fill a 16-ounce bottle full of water. The subconscious, however, processes 400 billion bits per second of information. If each bit is a drop of water, in 60 seconds, you would fill an Olympic sized swimming pool to capacity with all those drops coming down. Our mind is constantly at work. When people say that we only use 10% of our mind, what they mean is that we use less than 10% of our mind at a conscious level. It's what's beneath the surface that matters the most, though. Your conscious mind creates a suggestion and gives it to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind determines what we look for and what our map of reality becomes. But it's the conscious mind that initiates that direction. So I'm going to give you two exercises that control both conscious and subconscious mind, and you may want to write these down. They're not complicated exercises, but they will make a massive difference in how you create your comeback for yourself and with your team. If first thing every day, you will stand in front of your mirror and you will use affirmations. I am strong. I am confident. I am driven. I am innovative. I am a marketer. I am a gifted speaker. I am a brilliant trainer. I am going out of my way to make the world a better place. Whatever your affirmations are, tell yourself those affirmations while looking yourself in the mirror. In the prefrontal cortex, which is conscious processing, you have what's called mirror neurons. When you see yourself as positive and affirming, and you hear yourself as positive and affirming, you start to push that idea into the subconscious. That stimulates a part of the brain called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. The reticular activating system says, what should we notice today at a conscious level? And so at a subconscious level, it's filtering like the rudder on a ship. And it's saying, okay, let's go this direction or let's go that direction. If you decide that you're going to look for your greatness instead of your failure, then throughout the day, the reticular activating system filters out the things that don't fit with that direction and filters in the things that make a positive impact for you. By doing that, what you're doing is you're noticing the things that matter the most for the setup of your success. The subconscious is where the power is. The conscious is the initiator, but the subconscious is the noticer and the creator of the human mind. The map, however, is not the territory. And this map of the United States, if you look at it and pick any state that you want to notice on there, that doesn't give you a true representation of the state itself. If you pick, for example, Nebraska, just a few states up from Texas, you would look at that and you go, man, now I know exactly what Nebraska is like because I see it on a map, right? No. What you notice is this outline and the word Nebraska. Same with Texas. You see the outline and you see the word Texas. If you were to zoom down to Amarillo, Texas, and you were to look at a map, what you would see is that we removed the actual buildings from the map. You don't carry around a map with buildings to scale. So you're going, oh my gosh, I have to have this 10-foot long, 10-foot wide map, and all these little buildings are everywhere, and all the businesses are labeled on there. What we do for a map is we delete the building, we distort it by putting a little square there, and we generalize things like, oh, water is over here. Just know that water is blue. All the streets are lines. Just know that we didn't put actual pavement on this map. Our mind does the same thing for mapping out reality. Reality exists as a representation within our mind. If we can create the right map towards success and we delete the things that hold us back, distort the things that don't fit with our drive for the future, and generalize things in such a way that we are excited about moving forward, then what we discover is we can create whatever understanding we want. This is true, and I can prove it. If you have siblings, I want you to think about how different you are than your brothers and sisters. You may have grown up in the same house, in the same town, with the same parents and the same rules, and you will still map the world differently. Our representation of what truth is subjective. It's based on the labels that we have given experiences, and the labels delete things that don't matter, distort things to make them make sense for us, and generalize the rest. It is not the actual territory. It is a map or representation of the territory. In order to delete things that are holding you back, you have to go back and relive the experience of something that said, oh, I'm a limited person. So if you think back to a time when you felt restricted or limited or put down or held back, I want you to think back to that time and what it felt like and what it looked like. And then I want you to imagine whether you're seeing it in first person or third person. I want you to imagine whether it's in color or in black and white. And I want you to imagine whether you're up close or a little ways away from the experience itself. And then we're going to start changing things up just a little bit. If it's black and white, make it color. If it's color, make it black and white. If it's first person, make it third. If it's third person, make it first person. If it's up close, make it far away. If it's far away, bring it up close. You start changing things and you play it forward, and then you play it backwards in your mind and you try to connect the emotion again. And then you change some more stuff, change the background color, change the way that the people look, change the way that the people sound. Keep making it funnier and less like what it was until you loosen up the connection from the emotion to the experience itself. Once you have disconnected those at a small level, doesn't have to be major, then you can start to move it. And you have two options on the way that you move things around your map. The easiest way to do that is to think of where in your mind you see it. You're going to see it in this grid pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 squares in a grid. If you're seeing negative stuff up here, pull it down to the other side. So you literally reach in and grab it and pull it over, imagining that in your mind. And then I want you to imagine the greatest, funnest, most engaging, inspiring experience you've ever had. And think of it like flipping a lever up or sliding a bar, turning up the fun and the joy. So once you distort the picture and then you move it, then go back to a positive emotion and say the words, let the fun begin, and make your slide motion or lift the lever or whatever motion you want to do that is a physical movement. What you're doing when you do that is you're moving the experience. The emotions stay in the same pattern on the grid, but the experience can be moved wherever you want it to be. Once the experience in your memory is moved from where it was, it allows you to let go of the negative and recreate a map of where you want to go. Richard Bandler and John Grinder, who created this process back in the 1980s, they were able to help people get over negativity, over depression, over struggles in one session, just by moving where things were on the map and helping people to realize that the map itself is not reality. It's a representation of what reality has been for you, and it allows you to move it wherever you want it to be. So we've got to have a plan for success, though. Step one in the plan is learning to control your emotions. By moving the negative emotions and the negative experiences around, you're positioning yourself so that you can create success on your own terms. It also means that you learn to control when negative emotions get you and when positive emotions drive you. One of the rules that I created a couple of decades ago is what I call my 24-hour rule. When I get upset about something, it's okay to be angry. Our emotions are a natural part of who we are. So I get angry, I'll get hurt, or I'll get offended, or I'll get whatever, but I make the statement, I'm choosing to feel this emotion, and I name what the emotion is. And I will allow myself to feel that emotion for 24 hours and no more. If I want to feel it for less, that's fine, but no more than 24 hours. By doing that, I'm shifting my focus back to something that's more positive, and I'm flexing control over that emotion. Humans are the only animals that have the ability for emotional control. Our prefrontal cortex can override the limbic center of the brain, and we're the only ones that can do that. That's the main thing that sets us apart from everybody else. The second thing we have to do is we have to plan our outcomes. You don't plan your actions, you plan your outcomes. When you're creating your plan for the day, you're deciding what will be the 1 to 5 results, no more than 5, that I intend to get today. By creating something that is no more than 5 results, you keep yourself from being overwhelmed, but you also keep yourself very, very focused. Vilfredo Pareto came up with what he called the 80-20 rule. He was an Italian economist, and he said that 20% of the people owned 80% of the property. That was his original 80-20 rule. Then he started looking around and realizing that 20% of the things that he did created 80% of the results that he got. So he started eliminating a lot of that 80% and narrowing it down to the 20% of things that he really wanted to get done. A simple exercise that you can do with your people is to draw a line down the center of a piece of paper, put a plus sign on the left and a minus sign on the right. Then tell them, I want you to write down the 5 things that have the greatest impact on your success each day. And those go on the left. So the 5 or fewer things that have the greatest impact on your success, that goes under the plus column. No more than 5. And then you tell them, I want you to write down everything else that you do during the day on the right-hand side. And they make a list. And a lot of times what you'll see is there's 5 things on the left and 25 to 35 things on the right. If we start on the left with the things that create the greatest outcomes, then everything's going to go all right. We're going to be just fine. We're going to be more productive and we're going to be more successful. The third piece of your plan is getting the right feedback from people around you. This is difficult for a lot of people because a lot of people just want to do what they do and they don't want any feedback. It takes trust within your team to get and give great feedback. Patrick Lencioni, in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, said that if we don't trust one another, if we're not okay being vulnerable with one another, we will have all of the dysfunctions. Learning to trust one another so that we can give and receive accurate feedback is step number 1 in creating an effective team. So accurate feedback is looking at what the daily outcomes were, controlling your emotions in the process, and determining what you should do tomorrow in order to achieve greater outcomes. When we remove our ego from the process and stay focused on what actually matters, what the actual outcomes are, whether it's fulfilling the mission that we have for our organization or ensuring that we got new appointments to close new deals, it's the outcomes without the ego that are the feedback that we need. Get somebody that you trust to do that. I actually pay a consultant once a year to travel with me for an entire week and to watch what I do with clients, to evaluate my training programs, to look at the way that I market and sell things, and to give me accurate and really direct feedback so that I can be better the next time. So when you look at controlling your emotions, there's a process that we follow. It's not as simple as just saying, well, I'm just not going to be upset about things. That doesn't tend to work. There's 3 areas looking at that triangle. It's the way that we talk to ourselves. So think about that I am component of your affirmations. And then it's our conscious focus. To control the subconscious mind, we start by planting feelings in our mind as we go to sleep. So the second exercise that goes back with how you control your emotional states, and I started with the affirmations, is when you lay down at night, I want you to just picture in your mind, say the words, everything in my world is exactly what I want. It's perfect. And then get this image of everything going exactly like you want it to go, as if it's operating in perfection. What does that feel like? When you can identify the feeling, then you start to control the subconscious projection, which creates a conscious focus. And then the third piece in there to control your state is your physical body language. Your physical body language is the way that you carry yourself, the way that you sit, the way that you move. It's your nonverbal expressions, shoulders back, chin up, excited to go throughout the day, and smiling. A simple exercise that I did on physical body language with a hospital group out in Florida was I had them start every shift. This was in the emergency department. Start every shift with 2 minutes of smiling. I got the idea from a study that was done in the 1990s looking at overcoming clinical depression. They took 90 clinically depressed people, broke them into 3 groups, 30, 30, and 30, The first 30, they gave an antidepressant to. The second group, they gave a placebo, but also gave a statement. And the placebo with the statement was, take this pill every day for 15 months. You're no longer going to be depressed because of this. And then the third group, they gave them a mirror and they said, we want you to look yourself in the mirror for 60 minutes a day and smile for an entire hour a day. That is unbelievably difficult to do. If you've ever tried to smile for an hour, you probably ended up just like me with your face hurting for the next 4 days after that. As adults, we typically only smile 10 or fewer times a day. Kids will smile over 200 times a day. The average 3 or 4-year-old is smiling all the time. But as adults, we learn that smiling is not that cool. So maybe you shouldn't smile. So I get people to start smiling. 2 minutes of smiling at the start of every shift in an emergency department cut their turnover by 26% in 6 months. It also increased their net profitability by $1.6 million in 6 months. And it increased their time for payment from people by 40%. That means that people who got their bill paid so much faster than what they did when they just dealt with people that weren't smiling at the start of their shift. Physical body language helps to stimulate the right chemicals in the brain. The way that we hold ourselves, particularly how we see ourselves while we're holding ourselves in a positive state, it changes the chemical signatures in the brain and allows you to be happier. I'm not saying that people who are clinically depressed can all fix themselves just by smiling. But I will tell you the results of that study is that less than 50% of the people who took the actual antidepressant were better after 15 months. Over 50% of the people who took the placebo, the sugar pill, but were told you will no longer be depressed if you take this pill, they were no longer depressed, more than 50%. After 2 months, 100% of the 30 people said they had no signs or symptoms of depression after they smiled for an hour a day while looking themselves in the mirror. When you learn to control the limbic center of the brain, that's the reason for a center thing plus an external thing, and then you choose the right future, you define your future in the right way, realizing that you're living into a purpose, values, actions, and results, then what you discover is you're creating the future that you want. Our state of beingness is our willingness to accept that future right now. When we are in a state of being, what we're saying is that I already feel this future as my truth. And when you can feel something that's not there yet, as if it is already there, the subconscious begins to accept it as truth because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. It thinks only in present tense. And if it's the thing that creates, then you don't want your future to be defined as someday I will. I don't know when someday is, but it's definitely after Thursday, whenever it is. The reality is you need it to be today. I feel this today. I am is a present tense statement for your self talk. I feel is a conscious focus. I project is physical body language. When you have a purpose and you have a future defined, and then you control your state with that pyramid there, what you find is the future becomes your reality, and it becomes that reality very quickly. We have to engage in the right things based on that. But if we don't get the emotions right, the strategy isn't going to matter. What you do will only be predicated by how you feel. So every day, learning to control your emotional state is critically important. When you feel the right things, you will do the right things. But until you feel them, you won't go take action on them. We all know exactly what it takes to be successful in our jobs. And yet we know a lot of people who don't do the things that create success within their job. That means that we have to learn how we create action. So the exercise that I want you to do, and you can do this on your own, by yourself or with your team. I've done this in both settings. Today is July the 7th, 2021, and everything has gone perfectly over the last year. This is what my life is like now. What you do is you pick a specific date in the future, and then you think from your memory. When you think from your memory, your subconscious goes, oh, well, this must already be truth. You want to then, after you've defined what your perfect now is at a point in the future, what did we do over the last year, the last quarter, the last month, the last week, and on a daily basis in order to have achieved what our perfect vision is? When you map those things out, going from that future point backwards, what you realize is you already know the plan that will get you to wherever you want to be. You can see other people who have done the thing that you want to do or accomplished what you want to accomplish. And all you have to do is figure out what were their actions and then how did they do that? You are modeling their physical body language, their self talk, and their belief about the future, their conscious focus. The third component is when you get down to that daily piece, just like our exercise of the 5 things on the left and everything else on the right, what are the 5 or fewer things that you need to do every single day to create that future that you desire? One of my friends in San Antonio, Texas, he does this sales process where every single day he keeps selling until he sells something, and he does it 6 days a week. He is the top salesperson for his entire company, and he's generally done working by 9:30 or 10 in the morning. He loves to play golf, and his rule for himself is I don't get to golf until the cash register rings. So he keeps selling until he closes the deal, and he does it Monday through Saturday every single week, except for when he's on vacation. Just doing that, closing at least one deal a day, he said, I have to call on people, I have to present, I have to close deals, and I have to arrange the delivery of the service. And I have to make sure people get billed for it. Those are his 5 things. He simplified his life. He didn't say, I must spend an hour a day reading email, or I must do this, or I must, all these things that don't produce revenue. He put those after he did the things that matter most. So that third component is perhaps one of the most important things that you'll get from this is if you define your daily actions, you can almost never fail because those daily actions, as long as you're controlling your emotions, doing what you're supposed to, and getting good feedback, looking at whether it's working or not, you'll find that success will chase you down. When I began planning what I wanted my life to be like, every single day I used this graphic and I just printed it out on a piece of paper and I wrote down the 3 things that I wanted to be remembered for in my life, the 3 things that I wanted to be remembered for the next year, the 3 things for the next month, the 3 things for the next week, and what I was going to do today. After about 30 days of doing this every single day, first thing in the day, I realized that most of what I was putting in there to be remembered for in my life really wasn't fitting with what was relevant for me or what I wanted my purpose to be. What I realized very quickly was that I wanted to be remembered as the person who always invested in others. I wanted to be remembered as the person who stayed married to his wife for his entire life. And I wanted to be the coolest grandpa ever because my grandfather was such a positive influence in my life. That didn't have anything to do with money, but when I shifted my focus to always having a positive impact on others, my revenues went up massively. And I started to realize I needed to do the things in the next year that would put me in that place. And I needed to do the things in the next month that positioned me for the year, and in the next week that positioned me for the month. And then I realized that so many of the things that I was doing during the day were the 80% that only produced 20% of my results instead of the 20% that produced 80% of my results. I shifted my focus to the right daily actions. My week, my month, my year, my life got a whole lot better. Your legacy is based on how you want to be remembered. That helps you understand what your purpose is, and it gives you the emotional charge that you need in order to power through the tough times. We can't create a better way of doing things by using the thinking that we use to create the problem that we're in. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. So if you want to have what you've never had, You have to do what you've never done. When we seek out accurate feedback, that could be from a business coach, it could be from somebody that we work with, it could be from just about anybody that you can trust to be honest, open, and direct with you, then you can shift things. During this time, I have needed feedback more strongly than ever before. I made it through after 9/11, where I lost over 50% of my revenue in about 30 to 40 days. And I got all of my revenue back 90 days later. I made it through an economic downturn in 2003, another one in 2008. And now we've hit this pandemic in 2020, and it has arguably been the craziest all over the place year that I have ever experienced, particularly as an entrepreneur. I lost 100% of my revenue in 1 week. And within 60 days, I had all of my revenue back. It wasn't from the same companies, though. I shifted or pivoted my way of thinking and said, with the current environment, how can I do things differently? And my one fundamental question that I started asking is, how can I provide so much value in the things that I'm doing that people can't help but pay me? So ask yourself that question and allow your mind to just float on that. How can I provide so much value that I can't help but succeed and people can't help but donate? They can't help but be a part of this. If you are backing away and doing nothing, then you're limiting the value that you're providing. But if you're stepping up your game and saying, we were already a great organization that provided great value, how can we do even more of that? The same people that supported you before will step up and support you even more strongly. To me, that's the feedback that we're looking for is what value are we providing? And if the value is not significantly increased in an economic downturn, then those are the companies that will start to fail. But what I also find interesting, most of those companies that I read about, they had an economic crash at a time when the economy went south. And then they innovated and they marketed more strongly. And as a result of innovation and marketing, just like what Dr. Drucker said, they came back stronger than they had ever been before. The most successful companies in the United States history made their fortunes during an economic downturn. When things got tough, they got creative. They didn't use the same thinking they had before. Even though it worked before, it wasn't working in that particular environment with the situations they were facing. So give yourself feedback and ask for feedback. Are we providing more value than what we provided before? And if the answer is no, how can we step up our game and provide greater value so that people can't help but doing business with us? The organizations and the companies that are providing massive value during this time are creating massive brand loyalty. The ones that are backing off from providing value or not innovating at all are the ones that are not going to have loyalty coming out of this. So success becomes a whole lot easier when you do two basic things. Number one, you have to give yourself proximity to other successful people. I have joined multiple different programs, Facebook groups, and so on with really positive people who are really driven towards success. I hang out with people who are successful. I go out of my way to read books by successful people. I create as much proximity as I can to the people who have already accomplished what I want to accomplish. Then the second piece of making success easier is understanding what your why is. Why are you doing what you're doing? As businesses, Sinek talked about in his TED Talk, Golden Circles, we talk about what we do, then we talk about how we do it, but most companies don't talk about why they're doing what they're doing. He used Apple as an example when Steve Jobs came back and said, look at the commercials that they created. Somebody with an iPod with their earbuds in, dancing around with the song playing, So You Say You Want a Revolution. And they started creating this emotional connection saying that people who love Apple are revolutionary. They're the ones that are the innovators and the creators, and they're different and they're unique and they're special. And if that's you, we want you as a part of Apple. The why was that Steve Jobs said that he was put on this earth to put a ding in the universe, to fundamentally shift the way that an industry worked. And he did that in multiple industries. Apple was a computer company, but so was Dell. But Dell was here to make wonderful computers. They knew what they did and they knew how to make great computers. Apple was here to create change. That was why they were here, which is why they control more than half of the cell phone market today, is because the iPhone, even though it's not a quote unquote computer, which is how Apple started, it's revolutionary and it's unique. And they didn't change everything. They just removed the buttons. Because if you think about what phones were like before the iPhone came along, it wasn't a single button, which is what the first iPhone was, with a keyboard on the screen. It was BlackBerry. You had an entire QWERTY keyboard in front of you to type on. They knew their why, their purpose, and they lived into that consistently. And then they surrounded themselves with greatness. Throughout history, the most successful companies had leaders that surrounded themselves with other great leaders and joined programs that put them in proximity of other successful people. So, a few things that make success easier. First, every single day, build a routine, particularly if you're having to work from home or work remotely right now. You need to get up at the same time. You need to do your work at the same time. You need a routine. Routine creates a system of success. If you don't have a routine and you're not being quote unquote managed very closely, what you're going to find out is that our minds wander. We get very easily distracted. Research has shown that people who work remotely with a routine consistently produce more than people who work in an office with or without a routine. The routine is a foundational principle of success. The second is consistently develop the potential of your teams. I love what Benjamin Franklin once said. He said that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's where the real expense is. When we develop our teams, we are consistently pouring into them. Send out positive videos to them, watch TED Talks, participate in training programs, go to webinars like this, but learn something and then do something with it. Take it back to your teams. Read a book and teach them what you read. Get them to read books with you and talk about the programs that you're learning. The third thing is measure your outcomes every single day. At the end of every day, write down what 3 things you accomplished. If you accomplished more, that's great, but always seek out a minimum of 3 outcomes or 3 accomplishments per day. Just by setting that into your conscious focus, what you'll do is intentionally block out things that would be distractions and focus on the things that create an outcome. If you're not measuring your outcomes daily and not writing down 3 accomplishments per day, you'll discover that you just drift through your day hoping for the best. And then the fourth thing is surround yourself with great people. Get great friends that love you, support you, and build you up. Don't hang out with people that are mean. Don't hang out with people that are putting you down. Don't hang out with people that are telling you not to focus on the things that matter. Hang out with people who want the very best for you and who believe in you and who will invest time and energy and emotional focus on your success. Those people matter greatly. So great people will always make a huge difference in the way that you see yourself. So when we're getting on the right path, and I'm getting close to wrapping this up for the primary part of this, then I'm opening it up for any questions that you might have. Keep your emotions positive and strong. If you don't set your emotions on the right path, your conscious mind is difficult to control. When we want conscious focus in the right way, every morning we use I am affirmations, and every night we go to sleep and we feel into the perfect life. We create an image of the future and we think from our memory. I'm already there. What did I do to get there? The second is you never stop developing the potential of your people. We have a brand new generation that entered the workforce just a couple of years ago called Generation Z. With every advent of a new generation, we have a different way that we do business and different things that we need to invest in. Each new generation is just a new opportunity, but each generation responds to something different than the previous generations did. The millennials are the majority of today's workforce. Generation X will never be the majority, and baby boomers for more than 2 years have been retiring at 50,000 boomers per week exiting the workforce. So that puts us in a really unique position because the Xers are the smallest of the generations that the US has had in more than 6 generations. They're never going to be the majority, but a lot of them are in leadership positions. Understanding and embracing the differences that we have and loving people for who they are and where they are without ever giving up what their greatest potential is going to be so important for you. Look at people in love. And I know some people, when I say that, they're like, oh, great. Yeah, we got to love everybody. But you do. You have to want the best for every single person that you deal with, and you have to see the best in every single person that you work with. By doing that, you are believing in their potential. So, step one is believe in and set yourself up for success. And step two is believe in and set other people up for success. As Zig Ziglar used to say, if I help enough other people get what they want in life, I will inevitably get exactly what I want. I put together some programs that we have seen across this country are making a positive impact. I have about 30 banks that are across Illinois that currently use what I call Clean and Safe Certified. And it's a program that teaches how do you clean and disinfect effectively? How do you create a psychologically or emotionally safe place? And how do you create professional safety? The three key areas of a clean and safe workplace as we're entering back into the work. Second is you've got to create engagement, emotional engagement with your workforce. That means you've got to supervise effectively. 81% of why people leave a job is because of poor supervision. They don't like the person that they work for. 81%. That means 81 out of 100 people who quit their job in the last year quit because they didn't like their boss. 10 out of 100 people who quit their job in the last year quit because they didn't like their coworkers. 91% of retention and engagement is based on relationships. And relationships are based primarily on good communication, right motivation, positive accountability, and developing the potential of your people. And those are the four keys that a great supervisor has to master. Sales strategies are what get us back out of this mess. And I told you I got my revenue back. And then in 2001, when I lost over half of my revenue, I got it back as well. But that was when I really developed the right consultative selling strategies. I don't believe in hard closing people. I don't think that's a good idea. And I don't think people appreciate it. In fact, most people resent when you try to force them into doing something. But if you ask the right questions and you connect with people and provide value, then what you find is that they seek out ways to do business with you. And that's what I have believed since I came out of 9/11 and recovered from that economic downturn. I use a consultative model. I teach it in two of the books that I've written. One is in Selling with Honor, and the other is in Hypnotic Selling. In Selling with Honor, I have a whole section on how you do consultative selling, but it's just asking the right questions so that you understand what people want to buy, and then you allow them to buy that. When you use that model, it sets you up for loyalty from your customers. The fourth component or the fourth training program that I have found to be incredibly helpful is creating raving fans of your customers. It's the right customer service principles. That means the way that we talk with people, the way that we diffuse angry people, the way that we see our customers and interact with them, that's going to determine their emotional connection to us or their emotional angst with us if we do it the wrong way. So the raving fan customers are the ones that become followers of your organization. Just like the people who absolutely love Apple and they buy everything Apple that they can come across, or the people that are absolutely loyal to a sports team and no matter what, even if the team is horrible, they're not going to deny them. It doesn't really matter because they are loyal fans of that organization or that team. That's the emotional connection you want to create through customer service. And then the final piece is staying in front of human resource challenges. We have people problems and we have systems problems in our world. 90% of the problems that you will face in business are people problems. If you have the right system with the wrong people running it, you're never going to be that successful. So go out of your way to create a clean and safe place with engaged workers, building up new revenue, creating loyal fans of your customers, and staying in front of HR challenges. With the Family First Coronavirus Recovery Act, we have all new HR regulations that we have to think about that we might not have thought about before. I partnered up with Elaine Hand, who's a national HR consultant that I've known for the last 15 years, and I have her doing monthly updates inside of our system. So I put together some great packages for you guys that will help you get back to work. If you go to psycheofsuccess.com/back to work, for one low price, you can get access for all of your people. If you have more employees than what's listed there, just reach out to me and I'll get you a package deal put in there that makes it great. So if you have any questions, this is where I want to open it up for any questions that you might have. All you have to do is type them into the question, the Q&A area. And if you don't have questions, I would simply ask that if you are interested in having a one-on-one conversation about any of the aspects of what you learned today or how to apply those in your life, just reach out to us. The email that you can use is Debbie, Debbie, at jodyholland.com. Or you can just go to jodyholland.com and click on the chat window in the bottom right-hand corner, and we'll get a one-on-one set up with you. Spend 30 minutes helping you figure out how you apply these things specifically into your life and into your career to create the most success possible. I thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope you've gotten some great information from it. I would encourage you to go look for me on social media. I'm putting out a lot of great content. Every Monday, I do the Leadership Corner, Monday at 4 p.m. We talked about masks and the governor's mask rule yesterday. Next week, we're talking about the process of goal setting and the 4 categories that are critical for your success in setting goals. We're also going through once a month, and we're doing a longer form program, kind of like this one, that's just designed to help. So there's a lot of free resources that we're putting out there. We just want to make sure that all of us come back from this stronger than what we ever were before. So thank you guys very much. I can't wait to see you on the next one. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you on Zoom or hopefully in person before too long. Take care.